to the series of interviews with me, Iva Tasheva, Cyen co-founder, and our guest today is Marvin Ngoma. Marvin is a principal security architect at Elastic, and we will discuss not an ordinary topic, but the extraordinary AI adoption in cybersecurity operations. Why I say it's extraordinary is because we have regularly discussed the topic of AI, but I believe that Marvin, based on our previous discussions, has some extraordinary insights to share. Hi, Marvin. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks a lot. I'm super excited to be here, Eva. Looking forward to the topic. Hi, everyone.
Marvin, what is your role in the AI adoption in security operations? Where do you intervene?
Sounds good. So, I mean, like you rightly mentioned, I work for Elastic, right? And Elastic basically just works with everything data. Specifically in the security space, we allow people to bring their data onto Elastic. And then we've gone on to streamline workflows that support detection and response teams to really go after those threats that are troubling them in the environment, right? So when it comes to AI, I mean, these are interesting times we're living in. I'm a super huge fanatic of AI and its use cases in security, and specifically in my role at Elastic. Internally, I do influence some of the directions we're taking in terms of the workflows we're building on AI by engaging with some of our product managers and then just giving them feedback about what we're hearing from our users in that sense. But most of my work is spent talking to organizations, right? So public sector and private sector organizations, just trying to understand what are their problems from a security operations perspective, and then trying to see if AI is a good fit, and then just doing like proofs of concepts, and then also just trying to show the value of how AI can augment with some of their SOC workflows. So in terms of the adoption of AI, it's primarily seeing that augmentation opportunity in security operations.
Okay, let's deep dive into this. What is the most exciting and promising opportunities that you see of AI in security operations in particular?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? So, I mean, when you look at security operations and you look at the core functions of security operations, it's all about collecting data and then running detections or analytics on that data. And then you're trying to surface threats in that data, right? So then you end up with alerts, and then you do the triaging of those alerts, and then you prioritize the alerts and then do investigations on those alerts. And finally, you do that response action on those really, high value alerts in that sense. So where we see use cases that are like predominant in security operations, it's around those repetitive tasks within security operations teams, right? So things such as alert triaging, right? With alert triaging, there's a concept called alert overload or alert fatigue in security operations, right? So because we've got a lot of these tools, a lot of these capabilities, but they generate a lot of noise from an alert point of view. So you find that most security teams have a tough time trying to really identify which ones of those alerts are of significance to the organization. So we see that there's a nice, great opportunity to do alert triaging automatically, right, using GenAI as well. I'm coming from Elastic. One of the things that we introduced in the last few months, well, in about a year ago or so, is what we call attack discovery, right? So basically, what it does is it's an AI capability. It goes through all the alerts that have been generated within your environment, and then identifies alerts that are associated with specific attack patterns, right? So if there's ransomware that's going on, if there's data exfiltration that's going on, it will, bring to the surface those alerts that are associated with each disparate attack in that sense. So we see that alert triaging is a very common use case. And then I did mention that a lot of SOC teams or detection and response teams focus on collecting relevant data for their use cases. Now, again, some studies have shown, there's a lot of people that have done studies and surveys that have actually shown that a lot of security teams spend a ridiculous amount of time doing the data collection, and then also like just doing the pre-processing of the data, the enrichments and the transformations of that data. That takes quite a lot of time, right? But then we know that security teams ideally want to spend time finding the bad guys, right? So from a AI adoption point of view, there's a big opportunity to also use AI at the data collection point, right? Because again, a lot of the models behind these AI platforms they know the data sources, right? So when you're talking about parsing and normalizing data, there's a huge use case for AI. Another part where AI is coming in really nicely is that of being an assistant, right? So yeah, Elastic has got the AI assistant. Microsoft have got Copilot. There's a lot of these assistants that are beginning to spring up in many vendor products. Again, we're just looking at shortening and bringing in that efficiency aspect, right? So think of the AI assistant like somebody who's a buddy to you and they've got a lot of knowledge, right? So you go to them every time that you need help. Again, we're still focusing on those repetitive tasks. And then also, I'm tempted to say lastly, because again, the use cases are so many, but another use case that is quite interesting is in the knowledge retrieval space, right? Or knowledge bases, right? So for example, we use ChatGPT a lot. I use ChatGPT quite a lot in my personal capacity. ChatGPT is trained on certain models, right? But that's on public data. But most times, organizations also want to bring their organizational private data as context to some of these GPTs, right? So that knowledge retrieval and then augmenting the model together with your own private data, that is becoming a big use case within the security operations space as well. And it does add a lot of workflows as well, right? So we've got everything from report generation and maybe compliance reports, sometimes even your config documents, right? There's a nice use case that we have on Elastic where yeah, you're doing the alert triaging, alerts are firing in your environment, but then also you just want to understand, hey, which one of my firewall rules, for example, are so weak that allowed for this attack to happen, for example, right? So if you give the knowledge base, that also includes your firewall configuration as context to the AI, it will also see where those gaps are. So there's a lot of use cases, but primarily, I think the low-hanging use cases are those ones that are very repetitive in the SOC, and we're trying to really automate them with AI.
Mhm. And what do you see as the biggest challenges then in integrating AI in organizations? We also see a lot of misconceptions or maybe lack of understanding of why do we need AI, especially business leaders seeing it as a must-have and not always seeing how it could actually make a positive impact in their organizations. So what are the biggest challenges from your perspective and misconceptions? Maybe some funny, you can share some funny assumptions that are wrong.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's another question that's got so many angles to it in terms of the challenges and the risks associated with AI and also the misconceptions. But I think the one that really stands out for me, especially from a security operations point of view, is that of overtrust, right? It's gotten to a point where these GPTs are so good at, presenting content, even though it's inaccurate, even though it's not correct. They've got this way of phrasing stuff that makes it seem like it's actually legit and it's something that we can trust, right? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And then there's also the classic challenges around things such as hallucinations, right? Just getting wrong answers, right? And then how do you make that call when you receive this output from these AI platforms in terms of the accuracy of the results that they give you? And then also, apart from hallucination, a lot of these platforms also lack explainability, right? And then also accountability in terms of where are those responses coming from? Is there a citation in terms of the quality of those answers that are coming from these platforms, right? And then when you look at it from a GRC point of view, so a governance, risk, and compliance point of view, introducing AI in your environment is also a privacy risk, right? There's always going to be that risk of that leakage of data towards some of these platforms. So it's something that is really challenging organizations to think about. First of all, what data do you want to allow to interact with some of these platforms? And then also, what steps do you want to take in terms of just making sure that the privacy concerns are associated with that? And then also, I think another thing that a lot of people never think about is just the models that are powering these AI capabilities, right? There's so many models out there. Now, when you take a few steps back and just try to understand the steps that are taken in terms of training these models, right? There's a lot of steps, there's a lot of best practices, and there's also some practices that also bring in complications, things such as biasness, things such as discrimination, and things like that, right? So there's a lot of considerations when it comes to vetting the models that you want to incorporate as part of your AI workflows in an organization. And then lastly, I think the other challenge that's there, and we don't usually talk about it, but we should talk about it, is attacks against these AI platforms, right? Because we're getting more dependent on them, but then also attackers are beginning to realize it's a vector they can use to get into the organization, right? So we've seen in recent times adversarial activity against a lot of these models that are backing up this AI technology. There's a lot of prompt injections that are also trying to glean information out of the training data sets that are used in some of these models. So it also challenges users and organizations to get on that train of also monitoring these AI platforms. What's going on? What is the output that is coming through? Who's interacting with these models? And then also, yeah, is there any indications of threat actors trying to take advantage of these models?
Yeah, sounds. When you were speaking, I was thinking there was so much data that the AI model were used to train how to understand and how to interact with us, with humans, that I feel that we might have come to this moment where it understands us way better than we do understand AI models. So it's, of course, we might need to top up our understanding to be able to have a fair interaction between AI models and people. But you spoke about a little bit the security. So AI models could be attacked. They could also be used for attacking other organizations. And on top of that, we also see how AI is used for critical security operations and decisions. How do you see that? How can organizations maintain the trust basically in this very fluid and kind of detached from individual decisions environment?
That's a good question, right? So uh, in terms of steps that organizations can take, I think it's going back to the basics, right? The hygiene basics of like it. I mean, AI is similar to any other technology that we've introduced into organizations. So again, the risk assessment needs to come into place. The data classification needs to come into the place as well, right? So I think it's going to force us to just really consolidate on the best practices in terms of how we're going to introduce AI. Um, I had a conversation with somebody who's a CISO in an organization, and they asked me the same question, right? Like, we want to use AI, but we want to use it in a way that, people have got trust in it, and then also in a way that we've got control over the AI technology, right? And I just basically said to them, I mean, just take the usual hygiene practices, do a risk assessment, right? You're introducing AI, what risks is it bringing in? How do you want to, and I mean, that forces you to think about how do you want to use AI, and then also what kind of data is going to be interfacing with this AI technology. Is it everything? Is it a subset? And then also, we're in the EU. Obviously, the EU is highly regulated, even from a privacy point of view. And I think for me, that data privacy is a big concern when it comes to using AI. So you just want to make sure that you have your data classification in order. Which data do you want to allow to be sent into these platforms? There's something smart we've done with how we are integrating AI into Elastic as a platform. We do also, so first of all, we do have privacy measures. So we do give our users the option of, do you want to send certain fields in your data sets to Elastic or not, or to the AI assistant or not? And then even for those data sets that you say, yes, I would love to put this as part of the AI workflow, there's a concept called anonymization, right? So instead of sending Marvin's name as the value under username, you can also just, anonymize it. So just send gibberish to the AI platform. When that sends the data back, it will de-anonymize on the Elastic side. So in that way, we're not really sending the value of
Mm.
the username field. And that also applies to other personally identifiable fields as well. So in terms of maintaining trust, I think it forces us to go back and do, the initial steps of those hygiene practices, similar to any other technology. And then also, when AI is introduced into the environment, one of the things you want to do is just monitor it, right, from all angles. And when we talk about monitoring, it's about monitoring who's accessing it, and there's a bit of an access control issue as well, right? So not everyone maybe needs to access the AI platform, or if they do, you might want to do a bit of that role-based access control kind of scenario attached to it as well. And then as they continue to use it business as usual, you want to do the continuous auditing, right? What data is being sent to these AI platforms? What output are we receiving? What are the token usages and things like that, right? So I think in terms of maintaining trust, we need to have that ownership in terms of just making sure that we have certain caveats in place as we introduce this technology into organizations.
Mm. No, it's very interesting how you reflected on different dimensions that in fact we have discussed many of those in our YouTube channel with specialists like Aisato on GDPR. So what are the interlinkages, but also the conflicts between AI, how technologies and GDPR, as well as how to continue to use it with legally in Europe. We also discuss how to certify it, how to use it for security certification as well. So that's also very interesting debate. Thank you for reminding us that we might live in a new world, but the old principle remain, and so it's not all new. At least we know it, and we have to be sure to manage it before jumping. The big jump of AI. How can I say integration? But it's very difficult also to be able to adapt to this changing environment from a business perspective, because every time there's something new, and we tend to be more inclined to learn about the new things than to reconsider or to insist on the old things that we have to do in our home. So what do you advise like business leaders that are listening to us today to take into consideration as a possible scenario of AI evolution in security operation over the next 3 to 5 years, so that they can at least wrap their head around it and be able to act with the cautious and make decisions, informed decisions.
That's a very good question. Again, very multifaceted in terms of the answers to that question. But I think as leaders and decision makers within security, especially for those leaders that are responsible for the organizations, I think AI challenges our culture, right? Our cultural thinking in terms of how we want to innovate. Allow me to borrow a statement that was given by one of the professors at Harvard University. He basically said AI is not going to replace humans, but rather humans with AI are going to replace humans without AI, right? And I love to quote that every time I'm giving a talk or a discussion around Gen AI, because I believe it's so powerful, right? And also to me, it speaks about the next phase that we're going in, right? As a society, as the world. AI is here to stay, and the benefits of AI are massive, and this thing is going to blow. So for the security leaders, I think we need to start thinking about Gen AI adoption, right? And there's a lot of considerations in terms of prerequisites on where we would want to focus our attention, right? So it's things such as first and foremost, there has to be governance guardrails, right? So similar to the previous question and the answer that I gave, I think it's important just to have a bit of a governance framework around how you want to use AI, right? So what are the use cases? What are the different stakeholders that are going to be harnessing this technology, right, or making use of this technology? So for me, it's just having that clear governance and that AI guardrail, right, in terms of again the data classification, the access control, the model selection, and all those things that has to be well documented as well. And then when it comes to the security operations itself, I think the adoption of AI needs to also align with security operations objectives, right? What is your mandate as a security operations team currently, and basically how does that AI fit in, right? I'm not a huge fan of using AI for everything, but I think there has to be a bit of an adoption methodology associated with introducing AI into the environment. And then also another thing that a lot of people never think about is basically the current state tooling within your security framework, right? How does that integrate with AI, and what are the compatibility levels of your current state with AI capabilities? Again, I work for Elastic. We're thinking about these things as well, right? So one of the things we actually just announced at Black Hat is the ease, right? So it's a way we're trying to make it easy for organizations, regardless of the tooling that they're using, that they can easily integrate AI into the environment, and then it's compatible regardless of the current state of the tooling that you're using. But again, it just shows that organizations need to think about the current tooling, the integration points, and then also the compatibility issues around AI as well. And then also, you talked about the future, where we're seeing, this concept going in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. I think from a human capital point of view, the adoption of AI is also going to challenge the current internal resources we have. And that's basically the staff working within security itself, right? So I've done a study as part of my university studies where we also just looked at how is it going to impact the security roles in the near future, right? There's talks about the security analyst role completely being phased out by AI. I'm not a believer in that. However, I still believe that a lot of the security roles are going to change in the future. And how are they going to change? Again, it goes back to what I said earlier on. Some of the repetitive stuff that we do on a daily basis, that's going to be taken over by AI, right? But again, security is a very subjective topic. What is secure for organization A may not necessarily be, a security issue for organization B, right? So there's always going to be that need for human in the loop to start off with. And then there's certain workflows within security operations that you just can't really automate that much. You still need that human intuition, right? And that means people need to skill up to those types of roles within security operations itself. And then just to close it off in terms of the impact to the human capital, I think also the adoption of AI is going to challenge people working within security operations to upskill to understand how AI works, right? And then there's a big overlap with the data science teams as well. And going into the future, there's going to be even more overlap between the data science oriented teams and the teams that are going to adopt AI for their workflows. So I see more and more that role is going to change in terms of, or those roles are going to change as we continue to adopt AI into our workflows. So quite a lot of um, moving points or moving parts to your equation. But I think just to recap again, for me, the important thing is just have those governance, clear governance, and then those AI guardrails in terms of adopting AI. And then also just look at your current state, the compatibility and the integration of your current tools to AI, or maybe also it might demand that you make that change and move on to other tools as well. And then also just the organizational culture, right? How ready are you as an organization to do this shift to adopt AI as well? And then, yeah, there's going to be a change to the security roles going forward. And then also you just need to make sure that there's always that human in the loop safeguard in terms of how you are using basically the AI technology.
You said it right. The human still has the intuition. It's not only about knowledge and intelligence, and hopefully we'll preserve this skill also in the future. Thank you very much for this insightful interview. We'll see you for part two, where we would deep dive into the lock management and how to keep these technologies straight and accountable.